Hi Storyworks readers. I'm Allison, one of the editors here at Storyworks, and I wrote this issue's narrative nonfiction feature, The Amazing Boat Rescue of September 11th. It's a story of incredible heroism on a dark day in American history, September 11th, 2001. On that morning, terrorists crashed two planes into the World Trade Center's Twin Towers in New York City. Thousands of terrified people fled to the waterfront, away from the burning skyscrapers. And from around New York Harbor, boats of all shapes and sizes rushed to bring them to safety. Hundreds of captains and crews risked their lives to evacuate nearly 500,000 people from Manhattan. It was the biggest boat rescue of all time. Before writing this article, I needed to do a lot of research. I read books, watched documentaries, and combed through news stories from the day of the attacks. But I could not have written this story without the many incredible people who spoke with me about their experiences that day. One of them was Carlos Perez. On 9/11, Carlos was a young officer in the Coast Guard. He and his team evacuated people and guided other boaters who arrived to help. Talking to Carlos helped me imagine the fear and chaos of September 11th, and the bravery it took for him and other rescuers to race toward the scene of the attacks. I knew I wanted to share their story with you. And to get a deeper understanding of what Carlos and his team experienced that day, I visited the Coast Guard station in Staten Island, New York. There, Carlos led me on a journey back to 20 years ago. As we walked around the station on a hot summer day, memories of that morning came flooding back to him.
It was very, very, very clear. It's actually a beautiful September morning.
Carlos remembered how, shortly before 9 a.m., the peacefulness of the day was suddenly shattered.
Our search and rescue alarm sounded, and I didn't respond very quickly because it was broken, so I thought somebody was working on it. But I happened to step outside, and of course, as soon as I stepped outside, you can see Manhattan. It's a little hazy right now, but it's straight ahead here. You can see it like center. Beyond that fog, you can see the tower smoking where the first plane struck the tower. From that moment on, our search and rescue team 1 was called into action to respond, and we made our way towards the World Trade Center.
Along with a team of Coast Guard officers, Carlos took me out on a boat similar to the one he used that day. We retraced his journey toward Lower Manhattan, a journey he remembers in sharp detail, even 20 years later.
The events as everything unfolded, where I was, what I smelled, what I saw, it's still very fresh and vivid. That day there was a lot of boating traffic out because people were trying to get that last little bit of boating out of the way before the winter time comes in and people would have to put their boats away.
As we got closer to Manhattan, Carlos pointed out where he first began to realize this might not be an accident.
This is where we noticed that plane that was flying on the New Jersey side. That was flying kind of low. As we were making our way north, I kept looking over my left shoulder, and I noticed that it was still in the area. So we continue our journey up. We get just where that green buoy is, and we actually see the plane appear just in front of our windshield. It's almost as if it just kind of dropped down into view in front of us. He looks like he's continuing to descend and descend and descend, and it doesn't look right. And then we actually heard the engines rev up as they picked up power and strike the building.
Carlos and his crew soon learned the terrifying truth of what was happening. The U.S. was under attack. He and his team patrolled the waters around Lower Manhattan, trying to figure out how to help.
As we're conducting our patrols, we're starting to hear a rumble. And we quite don't know exactly where that's coming from because it was very faint at first, and then it starts to rumble and rumble and rumble, and then sure enough we look up and then we see that the North Tower is coming down on itself.
The heat of the fires created by the plane crash had melted the building's steel columns, causing it to collapse.
We were overcome by the debris, which pretty much restricted our vision. We couldn't see anything in front of it. It was like it was fog. Now we're starting to see some people trickling in towards the seawall. They weren't so much in a panic just yet. They were trying to get away until maybe moments later when the second tower actually came down. And we were once again overcome by that debris field where we really couldn't see anything. And then when we got up to the seawall, you started to see people appear as if they were like zombies. They were like covered in white, debris from the building. And then the call came from our leadership to evacuate the island of Manhattan.
But there were too many people for Carlos's team to evacuate alone.
I mean, if you picture the water's edge here, it's full of people. I mean, it's packed brim to brim. We were a 41-foot boat. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of people on that water's edge. It's not much that we can do. And I remember the Coast Guard actually calling all boats in the area that were able and willing to respond to head to the World Trade Center and assist with the evacuation. And we turned around and it felt like it was a split second. There were hundreds of boats behind us coming in, just charging in. The civilian boats, fire boats, police boats, tugboats, dinner cruise boats. Everyone that was on something that floated on the water made their way in there. I mean, New York has always been that kind of a place where people rally around each other, but in that sense, that was just as remarkable, just to see all these people just coming in to help.
It's a moment that Carlos says will always stay with him.
Sorry. I couldn't be more thankful for what they did. I consider them family, brothers, sisters. We shared emotions, tears. We kept each other going so that we can do something for people in need.
And that's what I want you to take away from this article. On a day when Americans saw the worst that people could do, we also saw the very best. Maybe, like I did, you'll find hope in the courage, kindness, and compassion of Carlos and the other rescuers. I'm honored to be able to share their story with you.